All right, Be Your Elite Podcast, episode 12.
12.
Mm-hmm.
Wowee.
I'm a co-host here, Miss Danielle.
That's me.
All you people that are watching her on video right now, she's a little handicapped right now. What happened?
I am 1 week post-op as of yesterday. So 8 days post-op. Hip surgery. Winning life.
What do they do?
Repaired my labrum. 4 staples, right?
3
staples.
3 anchor points.
3 anchors. Yes.
And then shaved a little bit of the bone away.
On both sides of the socket.
So it doesn't happen again.
Exactly. Don't want to do this again. So yeah, I'm all fixed up.
So you just grew deformed. And you
Yep.
paid for it.
It's actually common, more common than I knew.
Oh, interesting. I know one other person.
Mm-hmm.
No, 2. Yeah, I guess that is pretty common if I know 2 people. It's pretty whack.
It is pretty whack.
Yeah, so we took a little bit of a break, about 4 weeks, huh?
Well, you were passing kidney stones.
Yeah, well, we knew we were going to take Thanksgiving off. 'Cause
Yeah.
we just kind of were like, okay, this week is a wash. Not a wash, but like we just went on vacation and shut down and just did our thing. And then Monday, I thought I was going to die.
It's true.
This kidney stone thing. It's not a recommended experience.
No, it's not. It's really not.
The thing was, it was pretty miserable. And then that took
2 weeks,
9 days to pass.
right?
So it was just more or less just drugged up, hanging out on the couch, peeing in a strainer. And then come to find out, the prescription refill was twice as strong, and I was taking the same amount. So I kind of,
Overdosed?
I don't know if you want to call it an overdose. I mean, I'm alive.
Yeah, but your body was barely fighting that at the end. It
Yeah,
was
so
like, stop already.
So once I passed it and came off all the medication, there was probably another 4 days there where I
Your poor body was just like
wasn't happy.
not happy.
I don't know how people,
Take pain medication.
yeah, and
willingly.
like that feeling.
I don't either.
It's interesting to me because that is,
Not fun.
I mean, you're worthless. You can't do
Mm-mm.
literally anything.
Well, I guess for that reason.
I mean, I
they
guess
don't
if
have
the-
to feel.
Yeah,
They
I mean,
have to
don't get
feel
me
any
wrong, because when the,
feeling.
yeah, if I was in that much pain all the time, I guess it would be another conversation.
I was referring more to like mental pains that people don't want to.
No, but I'm
Sort
saying like
through.
the way people get addicted is because
Oh, sure, a physical
they're in
pain.
that extreme pain, and it's
Right.
like nothing they do resolves that.
True.
So I could see like that dependency of like, I just don't want to feel this shit anymore.
Yeah.
But the side effects of that is brutal.
Yeah.
So I guess once you become addicted to it, it's another thing. So we lost 2 weeks there, and
We
then
did.
a week in some testing and some other stuff, and then
Here we are.
mom's surgery,
Uh-huh.
and we're back at it. Missed y'all. Missed the conversations.
It's true.
What are we talking about today? I think we do this every time,
We do.
where I just spring a topic on you, and you're like, oh, okay.
That's how we do. I don't know how you and your other guests do it, but that's been our process.
I mean, for the most part, yeah. So what are we talking about? Okay, you're laughing. So I thought that I did a blog post last week, and normally when I write some of those posts, there's normally some kind of idea that's like stuck in my head, or observations of what I see with people, and considering. Well, first off, we're pretty much 1 year removed from one of the hardest trials of our life.
It's
So
true.
I guess you could call it an anniversary. Is that a thing?
Sure.
Danielle being retarded anniversary. Take 1. No. So I was, and is another thing that I see in a lot of people. I guess when we are really big about practicing gratitude, like quite a bit, we're very conscious and very aware of like, our health and our children and our jobs and our bodies and, our emotions and all the things that we have. And we're just kind of more or less grateful of all the stuff that's given to us every day. But I don't think that there's enough expression of like internal gratitude towards yourself and like what you bring to the table. And I think that that would be a good conversation for us to kind of explore and talk about, in the sense that this year sort of uncovered a lot of buried stuff, a lot of deep stuff, things that we didn't recognize about ourselves, things that we may or less ignore, or we give more credit to external factors, and just because a lot of people, associate that with like ego, when you're like, oh, I'm good at this and I appreciate this about myself. A lot of people kind of have like a negative connotation towards that. So I thought that would be a good conversation of like the things that we realize more about ourselves, that we have found a new sense of like gratitude towards, the things that we didn't realize either we had an immense volume amount, whether it be a characteristic or lessons learned or some other thing. So I thought that would be a decent combo.
For sure. That was a lot you just said, and I don't know how to dissect that with the first topic / subtopic. So you
want me to guide you into like a conversation, you weirdo?
Not a weirdo.
So crazy. No, so like let's, looking back, because obviously it's one of those things where like I had a couple people reach out to me and be like, hey, you doing okay this week? Because they knew it was like the 1 year anniversary. And I'm like, oh, it really didn't dawn on me per se. I think that I've just become so aware and so present, so mindful of just like the day of every day that I just don't really spend a lot of time living in the past that much, because I think we did so much reconciling during that time, and we lived in it for more or less 24 hours a day. I just didn't really see the need to spend a whole day or revisiting emotions. But that being said, it obviously is the moment you start thinking about it and you're like, oh man, this time last year, it brings up a whole bunch of, just thoughts around it. And mostly for me was just being like thankful that we actually made it to a year, for sure, considering what that day looked like. So for me, there was like just a ton of gratitude to just be like, I can't even believe we made it here. And so it was almost impossible for me to get wrapped around the sadness of it or the trauma of it or the pain of it at the time, because, again, I'd reconciled all that stuff and found peace around it, but almost in disbelief that that's how our Christmas went, that's how our Thanksgiving went, that's how that whole week went, that it wasn't really a thing, I guess, per se. So I don't know if that was the same for you.
I think it's like it was absolutely the same for me. And I think it's because I think our friends reached out to you, obviously, as you were not the one laid up in bed healing from just having had a pretty major surgery. But because they know how hard it was for us, the amount of work that we put into it. But on the flip side of that, because we did all that hard work, both together and on our own, mm-hmm. we are so committed to staying present that's just would be totally against what we're working towards daily. Mm-hmm. And so there's not as much raw emotion and there's not as much, what's the word I'm looking for? Unknown, to where our friends maybe they haven't had to go through the amount of growing that we went through. And so they just don't see how content and happy and at peace and joyful we are on a daily basis. Mm. They got to see some of that as we were going through the trauma and the healing, but they also know how traumatic it was and the dark side of the healing that we had to go through. And so I think that still sticks in their heads, but...
Well, I could imagine being on an outside perspective of looking at... Because it almost...
The ones that reached out know...
No, for sure.
Intimately how hard it was for us.
Yeah, but I think
especially
what we portray now, as far as whether you follow us on social media or you just kind of see us out at dinner and, if you get some of our time, it almost seems, when you know the story as intimate as some of the people do, it's hard to believe that was the outcome.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't seem like the norm. It doesn't seem like that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Like people kind of look at it and they're like, that's not, are they just, trying to save face and they're just now putting on this big act, but every day they go home and they're silent, sleeping in separate bedrooms and not really talking to each other? Because I could totally see that being
some other people's truths.
Yeah,
Fortunately, it's not
yeah.
ours.
I mean, I don't like to be around you.
Whatever. But that's, I mean, to each their own, and people can take what they want from what we put out. But ultimately, this is about our healing and our journey. And we definitely have had an impact on a lot of people that have had struggles. And I don't wish struggle on anybody, except for the fact that it's where people do the most growth. And it's unfortunate, but it's true.
Yeah, and that's tough to say that like you don't wish struggle on people, but I lean more towards wanting people to challenge themselves through some sort of struggle, because some struggle, the word has such a negative connotation to it. Like obviously that specific struggle we had was super negative and sad and traumatic and all those other things that are attached to it. The same with like, the loss of a loved one or
But the thing is, though, is I don't know that anything could have driven me to such inward healing.
oh yeah, you for a fact needed that.
Yeah. And I'm saying I don't wish that on people, but
Yeah.
I do wish that they could have some sort of prompting to go inward and really figure out what they want out of life rather than just letting life live it.
Yeah,
for
because
them.
it's not like you're saying if you're second guessing your marriage right now or yourself or trying to wrap those two as one to go out and search for another relationship to find that struggle inward, but that was just the decision that you made with the information that you had at hand.
Yeah.
And it was nothing more than that. It was just, and I think people, it's like this whole like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, and it's such an interesting, weird thing to me because I've had a couple of other people that reached out to me where I had no idea this was happening in their marriages, and they went through the exact same thing. And you guys would be extremely surprised to understand. And it's 48% of marriages. So for people to be like, I can't believe this is happening, it's like, well, statistically speaking, half the married couple you meet have struggled with this at some point or hiding it, or the truth hasn't come out or whatever the case may be. So is that a part of just human nature? And some people have to do that and experience that because it's the only thing that they can conjure in their head to know exactly where they're at right now, which is hard because it's like, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I'm at. I don't know if this marriage is correct. Did I start a family too early? Did I this? Did I that? How do I know? Well, I got to go see if the grass is greener somewhere else. That's like almost the basics of human nature. I mean, we joke about it in fitness all the time where like people be in a fitness regimen and they look great and performance looks good, but they're still second guessing their coach and they're still second guessing this and they want to go try, X, Y, and Z. I just think it's like a fundamental thing. And I think that some people, in order to create some kind of foundation around like honesty, commitment, loyalty, that they don't really know what those things mean or where they're at unless they fuck it up somewhere really bad. Because it's just like you don't really know what true happiness is unless you experience true sadness. So it's like it's almost in that same regards. Like how do you demonstrate loyalty and dedication and commitment to somebody if you've never really like shattered it or broken it or been taught in a healthy, positive way? And so that's just such a, for me, obviously I had my military career, seeing things growing up through life being like, oh, okay, well that's not a path to happiness. So I don't want any part of that. So I was taught in an unhealthy way, but then saw it reinforced in a super healthy way around, the Special Forces Regiment and seeing the majority of those guys kind of living, a loyal, dedicated, committed life towards something. So I had a lot of wonderful examples in that regard. So it's such an interesting conversation that, I was one of those people that was like, I would never do that, and I could never forgive that, and I could never. And so now circling around to like that gratitude conversation of things that we're exploring within ourselves, like, I think one of the things that I'm extremely grateful for is, looking back on myself is that I'm more forgiving than I ever gave myself credit for. Because I had been so quick to cut a lot of people off and get rid of people out of my life and like, okay, that's not good. I'm stopping that task and being, and not that I didn't forgive certain people in that aspect, I just didn't acknowledge or even deal with it. I was just like, no, that's out. And when it came to our situation, that was one of those things that you couldn't just be like, no, see you later, I'm out, because we were obviously with marriage, you're so entangled with, bills and kids and family and, time together and all those other kind of things. So it's way more complex. So it sort of made me face what am I actually capable of as far as understanding somebody's pain with compassion, and then understanding that that is happening to me, and then figuring out a way to forgive those specific actions around that. I think was, one of the more things that I'm really, really surprised about, and it created a lot more empathy in me when I meet people, I'm a lot more aware and a lot more conscious of like their body language, what their eyes are telling me, what the energy they're putting off. And it's just allowed me to just be a little bit more connected to people, because, I sort of had a specific way of thinking, and then I got roundhouse in the face down to another level of like, no, you're seeing this world wrong, like extremely wrong. So,
well, everyone has a struggle.
Yeah.
We all are great actors in life and in daily life, but everybody is struggling in some way or another, and maybe some people don't even know yet.
Mm-hmm. They're so unconscious and so numb that they're just shut off. Yeah, and we've all been in times like that. I mean, there was a pocket of a couple of years there where I was just like, wake up, execute gym life, try to sleep, rinse and repeat. And there wasn't a whole lot of connecting and understanding what I was actually feeling at all.
Right.
And I think you were in that same place and around that same time.
So yes, one of my things I'm most grateful for is being awake and being on a healthy journey and being comfortable, just being quiet. I didn't realize that there were so many people that are so uncomfortable in silence. And that's really sad. So I'm grateful for that peace in my life and for the ability to be still and be quiet and be happy in those places. This was a little bit of a different season as far as like social media and even media and texts and phones. Like it used to be very kind of check the block and make sure I replied to 75 different text threads or message threads or whatever, and I really like a simple life.
So a lot of the things that you thought you were chasing that would complete your life have changed, essentially. Yeah. The things that we, because we're no different than everybody else. It's like, got to get to the bigger house. What's the next car look like? We got to work, It's
just what we've all been trained to believe is what matters, and it's just really not. So I'm grateful to know.
It seems like such a broken record that we talk about that all the time, where it's like we're trying to figure out how to go from 2,500 square feet to 1,200 square feet, 1,500. 1,500 is probably what we're looking at right now, but and slowly, I mean, I think every week we throw more stuff away and we get a little bit more decluttered and a little bit more organized, and the house is getting more bare and more bare of just shit.
Yep. But it's a good way to be.
So what else have you, so when I wrote that blog post, some people were like confused in the way I worded that. Was I asked people, because they're like, oh man, I have the greatest wife and she does this for me, and I have, my kids are amazing, my job's been great, and my wife grounds me and all this, and they in the conversation sort of send so much praise to either their partner or their kids or their parents or the people at their gym. And I've asked a couple people this. I'm like, well, what have you given to your wife from yourself, or your partner from yourself? And they just kind of like this blank stare of shock of like, they've never actually explored within themselves of like what they bring to the table in relationships. Like what are some of the driving things and some of the strong things that you bring in a relationship? Because I think that's an important conversation, that if you don't know enough about yourself to understand what you give to the world, then there's a big fucking problem there, like a huge problem. And I think a lot of us are in that. They're like, I don't even know why I'm here.
Right.
I'm the mom in this relationship. Though I just take care of kids, and like that's the definition. And it's like, it's, I don't know if you want to call it energy or what characteristic are you bringing into it. What sort of attributes are you trying to cultivate in people, or you're trying to be an example through, or whatever. Like, what do those look like for you, do you think? Like, what do you think you add to my life? Because we're very big about, like, I don't need you and you don't need me. I'm not a source of completion in your life, and nor are you to me. But there are a lot of things that obviously I'm in this relationship for, because you bring to the table, you add a lot, you have me explore certain different aspects about my life that just challenge me in a positive way. But, what do you think those things are?
That I'm supportive.
Yeah, you're probably one of, like, almost too supportive sometimes. Which is so funny, because one of my biggest things that I think I bring to it is I force you to take a lot more risk than you probably would in life. Like, I think that's one of my, is that I push with just enough contention and challenge to get people slightly out of their comfort zones. Some people like it, some people don't. I don't really care, but I think it's something that if what I give to the relationship, what I feel a sense that you feed off it a little bit. Like, you crave it, but you don't have enough courage internally, at least you used to not, to act on that solo. Like, you need that support structure from me. You need that, like, kind of push, like, let's go do this, let's go do that, let's travel here, let's drop a trip, let's do this. And so, like, which is funny because you're so supportive that it's like, is that the attribute that allows me to push you towards risk, because you just support so much? is that our coexistence right now?
Maybe.
That I'm such a risk taker, and you don't want to, like, say no to anything now because you're so supportive. You're like, yeah, let's do that, even though you're like, fuck, I don't want to do that.
No. You've always been the risk taker, and I've always just been the support. Always, always, always. But
I mean, that's another thing that I'm really grateful for, is that, and don't get me wrong, I'm like, and this is the thing where people think, like, man, you'll just do anything. You're not scared of anything. It's like, no, I'm terrified of 75% of the shit I do. Like, nobody goes to Special Forces selection without, like, fucking nerves and fear and scare and all your insecurities and all this other kind of shit. And I think one of the things I'm really grateful for is I always find reasons to break through those fears. And I've never had a problem. I mean, maybe when I was little, I would shy from some stuff, and then just realize that, like, that's not getting me anywhere. I have to, like, continue to break some of these walls down. But that's one thing that I'm really grateful for, and that I've really trying to find an understanding on why people have such a difficult time with that. It's like, there's a whole bunch of reasons why they can't do shit instead of all the reasons why they can. And I never explore the can'ts. Like, they never even come up on my list. When I look at something, I'm like, no, I don't even create a list of can'ts. I'm just like, oh, okay, what's the logistics and the things that I need and the decisions I need to make in order to get to Z on this equation,
Yeah. You're just, we're all on our own journey and our own timeline in how we're going through this life. And you're just very, very, I'll say fortunate, but you've just always had that different growth mindset, if you will. And so that's where you're a little bit different. Some of us have, most of us, and there's so many people that haven't had any awakening yet, but, societal norms and people just accept that, like, without question, more people than not. And so because you've always just kind of thought outside the box and have never really been, quote unquote, in a normal situation ever, I mean, your experience of life has been rather not normal.
Yeah, but it's my normal.
For sure.
Like, it's my reality
but
of what is normal,
That has been such a gift for you, though, because you think so differently.
Because I was
in
thinking,
a good way.
Yeah, but I was thinking about it in the sense that taking one big giant leap of faith towards something that shows you how capable you actually are is what I attribute it to. And so whether that just
Sure.
be, you know, for instance, like joining the military and going to an airborne unit, like they used to mess with you all the time. That like not mess with you, but like that was one of the big things about being airborne is like you chose twice because people choose to join the military and that's one big decision in their
Sure.
life and it's risky and we're at a time of war and all these other kind of things. But one thing they used to pound on us in basic training is like, well, you chose twice. You volunteered twice. You volunteered to join the Army and then you also volunteered to be in an airborne unit, knowing damn well we're never going to,
Sure.
blanket. I mean, never. I say never. I hate to say that, but going to the 82nd Airborne, they kind of cultivated this idea that like you volunteered and took a leap of faith into something to try to see, are you one notch better? And I hate to use the word better, but willing to extend your capabilities out one more task to be a part of the military. And then I go ahead and layer another thing on top of that and go special forces on top of that. So I think that even just that little thing where you're like, everyone has this idea that like, oh shit, you see all the videos of airborne guys and they're running all over the fucking place. You have to jump out of planes and it's a super hard, terrifying thing. And for me, I got there and was like, whoa, this isn't, and this may sound egotistical or arrogant, but it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that was that, not that it wasn't as hard because it's a hard task to do, but it wasn't that hard for me because I was more capable than I gave myself credit for. Mm-hmm. And what that did was it just gave me a snippet or a snapshot of like, dude, you're more physically prepared than you thought you were. You're more mentally prepared than you thought you were. When you sat in the door of the airplane to jump out of an airplane for the first time, you were like, okay. I thought that was going to be way more than what it was. It's a lot of times we work ourselves up to some kind of anticipation that's way more than the actual task is, as far as like fear or whatever the case may be.
But remember, people don't like to be uncomfortable in any aspect, whether we're talking physical discomfort, emotional discomfort, spiritual discomfort. Nobody likes that space. It's unfortunate because that's where so much freaking growth happens.
Yeah.
But I'm learning to embrace it because there's just so much growth to be had and so much understanding and so much good to come
and I think
from.
people discount that, like the challenge of, like emotional challenges. Like no one wants to sit down and have the honest conversation with their partner about intimacy. We always talk about intimacy because that's one of these ones we get a lot of questions about it. But it's like nobody wants to sit down and talk to their partner, whether it be embarrassment or shame and say, I'm not being fulfilled in these areas within our sexual relationship. And here's why. And here's some of the things that I'm in my own head bobbling around, and I've got a ton of guilt and shame and all these other kind of things around it. And the conversation alone is just uncomfortable. And they're just like, nope, I'm out.
Yeah.
And they just don't have it.
Well, like, right. Fear of being judged, fear of their partner feeling like they're lacking. I mean, there's so many
layers.
Yeah. And so, again, that's another thing that I'm just grateful for is the ability to communicate better, for sure.
Well, and that's a crazy thing because, like, when most people think of challenge and struggle, they think of, I got to go out and do some monumental physical task or something or other. But, sitting down and having those uncomfortable conversations with your partner or your teenager or your parents or whatever can be just as stressful and just as long as a journey as it is to become a Special Forces Green Beret.
Yeah.
That could be a 2 to 3 to 5 year journey once you start the initial conversation. And that's a lot of emotional struggle and tug. And I mean, because I remember starting those conversations in 2012, 2013, and you just being like, no, we're not having this conversation at all. And just being so shut off and me trying to then battle all the things you were talking about. Like, is something wrong with me? Am I fucked up? Why do I want to have these conversations if she's not willing to? Is this what marriage is supposed to be like? Or these relationships I'm going through all that same thing from 2012 till 2015 16 when finally I was like, oh, fuck it, man. I'm just gonna do whatever makes me happy. And if one day she wakes the fuck up, great. But I don't think, had you not had done the same thing, I mean, our end was inevitable.
Sure.
At 2015-ish area, 2016. Because we kind of like broke apart and sort of started exploring ourselves and what life meant to us personally. And then when we, you know, like there's like some kind of magic moment where you're like walking down the hallways and you look at each other and you're like, oh shit, I'm super in love with this chick now. What the fuck? Like, that's not how it happens. It just kind of cultivates and kind of grows, and you just naturally just kind of become closer because, you know, you guys are now releasing that resentment and animosity of being something that you're not.
Yeah.
But I think had neither of us just finally turned on our fuck it switch and, you know, ignored the external world, ignored our own relationship, and just tried to figure out what the fuck we were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, the end was inevitable, and I think a lot of people do that over time. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that because, you know, people find a ton of guilt in making decisions based on the information at hand. And they just like, they harbor all this, like these feelings of like, what the, like, I'm not supposed to feel like that. What the fuck? This isn't, you know, and it's just all these, you know, they build up this whole idea of guilt by just, you had to make a decision with what you know right now and the information that you have right now and the emotions that you're harboring right now. You have to make decisions. You have to. If not, you'll just be sort of trapped forever. But so that's another big piece that, you know, I notice about myself is that I'm really quick to like make decisions. Like I don't really spend a lot of time fucking around with the stress and nuances that I'm just creating in my own head. Because if they were real, you would just make a decision and then they would manifest. If they were real, whatever the thing is.
Right.
You know, like, but the majority of the time we're like, you don't make any decisions because you're like, what about this? What about that? Mm-hmm. What if this? What if that? What if this? What if that? And you lose a couple of weeks or a month or a year, and then you finally make the decision. You're like, fuck, man, it was none of that. You know, so for me, I think I've been in so many stressful situations and so much bullshit that I'm just like, no, man, I could dwell on that for a month, or I could just make a decision in less than a day, depending on the size of the decision.
Right.
And realize that, like, what the truth of what's going to manifest out of that is only going to become reality if you make a decision.
Well, the beauty of where we are in our lives is the biggest decision that we have to make is, are we going to Czech Republic or Ireland first? Like, honestly.
I'm like leaning towards Italy and pizza and wine.
This is true. That's been on your mind for a while.
I've never been. It just looks so nice.
It's true. So that's, you know, and that a big piece of, you're so crazy. I was thinking something while you were talking. It's a few seconds back, but that's okay. I don't remember anymore.
Yep, that's that Alzheimer's brain.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's real. It is so real.
You got to figure that shit out, dude, because if we kind of joke about,
hey,
Danielle's got the 23andMe, some abnormality, something or
Stop.
other.
That's not where you get most of your information, guys. If you're going to spend the money to have your DNA tested, you might as well send it through Prometheus and Dr. Rhonda Patrick's website to have a little bit more in-depth understanding of all of your own.
So anyways, Danielle has the abnormalities that, like, 4 times more likely to have dementia.
Alzheimer's.
And 3 times more likely to have Alzheimer's.
I have one APO3 allele, which is the same as Dr. Rhonda Patrick. So now, she's my source for all things.
So with that being said, I'm expecting my future to look like The Notebook. And I'm going to have to wake up every morning with Instagram and be like, no, look, we had an amazing life together, and like scroll through it. Instead of reading a notebook, we'll call it the Instagram instead of the notebook.
Yeah.
And then I'll finally come to the conclusion, like, wait a second, if I'm super healthy, my brain's super healthy, and you don't remember me, I'm fucking out. I'm gone. I'm going to go find me somebody else.
That's okay, 10. You'll be dead by then.
Yeah, 10 will be dead. But you're not even going to remember.
I will remember
You
because
won't
I'm
remember
doing
if I did.
all the things to make sure that I don't
Anyways,
end up with Alzheimer's.
so we're grateful for
Knowledge.
gene knowledge and gene tracking. I'm grateful for my future of the Notebook reenactment, where I get to convince you that you love me every morning, like 50 first dates. It's exciting. It'll be fun.
Yep.
Live in the past every day. No, look.
Hey,
Can
you thirsty?
Can you not drink my water, honey? Babysitting some dogs for Christmas. So what else? Outside of like those internal things that, really starting to acknowledge now, like what are the positive things that we feed to the world from ourselves?
Well, first and foremost, we're running out of time, but our children are getting older, and that means that they're going to be starting their own lives outside of our environment. And so just trying to have the most positive impact that we can on them and how they think through things and how they experience struggles and growth. And
I think our role, we've sort of stepped back and we've almost kind of inherently done this for a while, but we talk about emotional intelligence all the time, that it's not cultivated anywhere outside the home. And I was reading I forget what it was, but the world essentially has your kids for like, I don't know, I think it's on average, like with school and extracurricular activities and some other stuff, it's like 60 something hours a week that they either spend with their friends or at school or whatever. And then on average, on what you get with them at night and anytime you get with them in the weekends. And this, is this middle school or high school age kids? I don't know, probably around the time that they're a little bit more malleable and understanding their own emotions. But, the parent gets them from anywhere between 2 to 3.5 hours a week. So you're, for us, we're like, when we started like kind of seeing some of the stuff, we're like, shit, man, the world is molding your kids for 60 hours a week. So you can only go against that so hard, or you're going to start ostracizing your own kids, because it's like you're going to push against social media and phones and technology and all these other kind of things, and your kids are just going to end up hating and resenting you. So trying to find balance there has been an interesting thing. But for us, we really haven't messed with. I mean, we have some like, you're not going to play video games all day during the week, but the weekends are yours. Make good decisions. Have those conversations. But for us, I think we spend the majority of our time trying to cultivate some form of emotional intelligence, whether having conversations around their emotions and relationships and girlfriends and
just to not have expectations. There's so much pressure on these kids, and it's sad. And I just don't want our kids to feel that pressure that they have to know what the next step is. Like, you have a whole long life. There is no right next step. You just have to take a step. It doesn't matter what it is. Just do something.
Yeah.
And
which is weird because we have that conversation with them all the time, and they're like,
they can't hear it.
No, I have to go to college. I have my friends. We're getting a dorm, and it's like the normal shit that I remember, being fed to us was like. And me, when I used to hear that shit, I was like, fuck that. I need to get out of the house and make money.
Yeah.
That was my sense of urgency at the time, and which is at the time construction was booming in Vegas.
Right.
And I was like, man,
but that was pure self-preservation on your point. You don't realize that now, but looking back, I mean, with the knowledge that we've gained, like you just knew for your own happiness and well-being, you just didn't want any part of that. And so the only way for you to get out of that was to make enough money to support yourself. And the only way to do that was definitely through construction, which you came out making a killing straight out of high school.
I was making a bunch of money for sure. By the time I was 20, I mean, I was making six figures at the time.
But it was a great lesson in knowing that you learned a lot of life skills throughout working at the trade that you did, because you're still very handy.
Yeah, it was one of those.
Do anything.
It was one of those things too, where it was like it gave me a different perspective in the sense that, like,
you don't always want to work this hard.
Well, there's that, and then there's also like you can you can sort of, it gave me this perspective that like there was no right answer.
Sure.
It wasn't college. It wasn't starting your own business. It wasn't doing construction. It wasn't going to work for your parents. It wasn't anything. It was whatever the fuck I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And so like when I graduated on a Friday and I moved out on Sunday.
Yeah. And you literally were working Monday.
Yeah. And started my first job on Monday. And I just realized that like, you know, I didn't have money for college. I didn't, you know, come from a wealthy family. We didn't have all these things. I was talking with somebody the other day about, you know, the struggles of, you know, different demographics and regions and neighborhoods and cities and all these other kind of things. And it's like, I get one side of the coin. I also get one side of the other coin. And for me, I didn't see any of it. I just saw opportunities, and it was in my hands to do whatever the fuck I wanted to do with them. And I didn't see any kinds of advantages or disadvantages or whatever. I just saw a bunch of opportunities and was like, I can do whatever the fuck I want. I can go to college. I can join the military. I can start a business. I can work for this other guy. I can literally do whatever by just going, I'm doing this now. Mm-hmm. It was as simple as the phrase in my head of like, I'm going to go do this now. When I joined the military, it was like, I'm going to be special forces. Like it was just a matter of just saying it and verbalizing it and then just making the decision to not quit on X decision.
Yeah. Execution is hard for a lot of people. Being a decision maker is hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think that's why we work so well together.
Well,
because I can't even decide on where we're going to eat or what movie we're going to see.
Yeah, the fear of failure, though. You're worried that, like, oh, if I pick a shitty movie, then everybody's going to be disappointed that I picked a shitty movie. I don't know if that's the undertone of it, but
I just know that I've never, ever been. I've just never.
But I would like the kids to sort of have, because you did the conventional approach. You went straight to college.
Right.
Got married young, started a family young, based on where we grew up in our culture and the Mormon religion. Like that was the norm. You go to college, you start a family, you either work in a career or you take care of your kids. That was kind of that was like the societal norm back then. And me, I was like, fuck this, man. I don't want any part of this shit. And I don't know if it was like this need to like, there's more out there and I have to see what it is for myself and experience it for myself. I never had anybody that was like, you got to go travel the world. You got to go see different things. Those were just byproducts of going into the special forces. I didn't know that was going to happen. Yeah. I mean, I knew it was you watch the videos and shit, but you can't comprehend any of what that is by some bullshit recruitment video.
Because every single one of you has a different career in some aspects. I mean, it can look very different. So there's no way. I mean, they can give you a general idea of what it's going to look like, but based off of your characteristics and your personality too, you all learn different lessons being exposed to the exact same thing. So it's just like anything.
Yeah, but there's a lot of parallels that, you know, we see true poverty. All of us see true poverty, whether it's in, you know, serving in training missions, all these different continents. You see a ton of death. You know, and that's why, you know, I've talked with a lot of people about the gift of mortality, like, you know, actually legitimately seeing that, like, you know, one mortar round changes everybody's trajectory of life, you know, and that's an uncontrollable thing. So,
well, and I think that's why it's so easy for you to execute on decisions that for those of us that have never seen some of these real life, like huge things.
Yeah, but some guys ignore them. That's what blows my mind. Some of them get wrapped up into the emotions of it and they ignore the lesson that like you've been given a gift.
Yeah.
Of life every day and whether they're squandering it or not or destroying relationships or just not, they're in this downward spiral of self-destruction. I don't know where that comes from. I'm not saying that's every SF guy, but there's a good bit of them. And that, I mean, that's probably just the military in general from fighting, you know, war for almost 20 years now. But, you know, but the flip side of that is outside of all that, there's a ton of beauty in, you know, war zones and, you know, a ton of beauty in, you know, all those poverty-stricken areas. I mean, families still exist, relationships still exist, laughter and love still exist. And so it was for me, that was the stuff and it took me obviously a lot of time to like look back on those situations and see, you know, what they were giving me. Yeah. Because in the moment I was just, you know, train guys to go to war, you know, go out and sightsee when you can, whatever. So yeah, I don't think, I would hope that, like us being the examples of the way we do things, our kids are at least by osmosis absorbing some of it, because like the way they talk is the way culture and society is now. But now there's some deep rooted, like, I look at Trinley, and 90% of the shit she does throughout the day is like my mannerisms and my things and my attitude and my beliefs. And so I know that there's a piece of me that exists in there, and then what she does with those capabilities is what's yet to be unfolded. But in the same with Tristan, like he's got so much view in him.
It's so weird
It's
because
hilarious.
now that I realize like where we were in our lives as our children were much younger, it's obvious that I was more present with Tristan. You were gone.
Yeah.
That was like the height of when you were gone all the time.
Yeah, 8 months out of every year.
Yeah.
For about 10 years. Yeah.
And so that's why he's so much like me. And then obviously
That could be
Trinley's your little ride or die. So
that could be part of it. Yeah, I didn't think of it like that.
I just kind of thought of that the other day.
But in their most malleable times, like who were they exposed to the most? Yeah.
So you got some work to do with Tristan.
Nah, he's good, man. So you're such a wacko. So what else? Out of this year, I mean, it was a big year, super big. Changed all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
It literally flipped a lot of our shit, man. The way we think about a lot of things. Even now, like I'm getting ready to open a tattoo shop. So funny, I can't just not work for myself. I couldn't just go get a normal job somewhere or go work for somebody, or I still have to think and create. So I got a tattoo shop coming here in the next couple of weeks. That should be fun.
Yes.
And then paint. Turns out I like painting.
Yeah, you're an oil painting master.
I don't know if we'll say master, but it's turning out pretty nice.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that's gonna do. Like,
Maybe nothing.
Is it a commodity? Is it just a experience to learn more things? Who knows? Yeah, I got a bunch of trips lined up.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like all we do now is just buy experiences. We're not buying shit anymore.
It's true.
So that's a good place to be in, because I don't really care for shit.
It's a good place to be. That's where Christmas was too this year, mostly is experiences with our kids. And with my niece and nephew that are going to come spend a week with us.
Little assholes. I'm really excited about them. They literally have cousins. Their son's the same age and the daughter's the same age, and
we get to hang out for the week, so that'll be fun.
Spend the summers together.
Yep. So yeah, 2018 was the year of growth. 2019, more growth, more experiences.
I guess. So what else about the year sticks out for you? Did you have anything with the anniversary? Such a weird term. Anything come up?
I didn't even
know. Well, you had surgery the day of.
Yeah, that's true.
The 21st.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even.
Yeah, you were high for a week during the whole time.
I am grateful that the pain was not as bad as I was expecting it to be. I had no idea what it was going to be, but I just, try to prepare for the worst. And I was pleasantly surprised with the lack of severe
Well, that's
pain.
good to hear, though, because obviously with the surgery, I didn't want to, how you feeling?
Right.
Because obviously a couple people text me and I at least thought about it. Like, oh yeah, it has been a year. Shit. This time last year, I had 2 broken hands and a shattered elbow and losing my shit. Literally, it's I don't know. It's not funny, but it's funny to me to see how unhinged I was. How capable I was, but how I didn't even realize that I was even capable of that much chaos internally.
Well, yeah. I don't really know what to say to that.
It was chaotic.
It was chaos. But it's beauty now, though.
Yeah. Yeah, it was it's so funny. It's like someone asks me all the time, like, I wish I can just start over. I wish that would have never happened. And it's like everybody I've talked to that stuck it out and fought for the person that they either betrayed or lied to or whatever the fuck you want to call this thing. All of them are just like, I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm almost grateful for that happening. I wasn't grateful for the period that we had to go through it. You kind of are in a roundabout way. But anybody that just didn't give up because they knew that that's where they were supposed to be and were looking past who that person used to be and were taking them for who they are now, all of them are, I think some of the happiest people that we know, some of the
strongest relationships.
Yeah, strongest
for sure.
relationships for sure. So it's like fucking cliche bullshit. It's like the struggle just brings you guys closer, I guess. But I think if you're willing to stick in it and fight it out, that's true. But like, it's like, what are the statistics of like married couples where like they lose a child? It's like 80% divorce rate, or it's like that trauma obviously isn't bringing people closer. So, what's the linchpin there? What was the thing that we figured out? People talk about unconditional love and unconditional commitments. And it's like, yeah, but are you actually really unconditionally committed to each other? Because
I think it's really just about whether or not both people are ready to truly look inward. And that's really the only way. I mean, truly the only lasting way for any relationship, no matter what struggle it is. If you look at someone, especially people that have been together for 10 or 20 or 30 years, there's so much that could be argued about. There's so many conflicts over all that amount of time. There's great memories too. And then you have a huge monumental thing. And if you can get through that, figuring out what got us to this point. And again, it's just about whether or not you're willing to go through that ugly, dark, really uncomfortable, really sad. I mean, all of the negative emotions that you can think of, but then to unveil the most beautiful emotions that you can think of on the other side of going through all that mud.
Yeah, but that's what's hard about it because like it's not like we had the foresight to be like, it's fucking beautiful over there. We just gotta live in this shit for 24 hours. We were just living in it for 24 hours.
Well, we didn't know any other way.
Because we didn't know any other way. Yeah, we just didn't, not even reading stories. It's not like there's like some fucking help desk somewhere that you call and they're like, dude, just fight it out. Because in 90 days, day 91, like you guys are going to look at each other and be more in love than you ever have in your entire lives. Like that doesn't.
I mean, it makes sense now because we did a lot of reading and a lot of therapy while we were in the midst of it all. But it makes so much more sense now, obviously, as our brains can actually comprehend. We're not in survival mode anymore. We're not in fight or flight. Like we actually can internalize and gain some of and reflect and understand what we were going through. It all makes perfect sense now. But yeah, when we were in it, it was just like, fuck, we're just surviving. Like this is the only way we know how to do it. And this is the way we're going to do it and hope for the best.
Yeah, but that's just such a...
But we were both willing to do the hard fucking work. That's the difference. Both partners have to be.
Yeah, because I think when you have, because I talked about it all the time with somebody. I was like, if you would have showed any kind of, I don't know, resentment or not wanting to like sit in a conversation that I needed to hash out or any of those other kind of things, we wouldn't have made it.
For sure.
like if I would have sat down and been like, you're going to fucking tell me about this, this, and this, and you go, no, I'm not, we wouldn't have made it.
Right.
Like we just wouldn't have made it. And I think that's probably one of the most important things is that we read on a ton of stuff is like, you have to understand, like if I'm demanding to hear something, that I have to have some kind of empathy and compassion towards why you buried that or don't want to talk about it or don't want to bring it up. Like, is it associated with, it's going to hurt me more, or is it too much pain for you internally? And I think for us, we just threw all that shit out the window and we're like, if someone asks for something, you fucking give it to them during this time until we can get to a space where everything's out, it's clear, it's honest, and now we can start finding middle ground.
Yeah.
But there was no middle ground. It was like we were just standing in the middle of a battlefield and we were throwing every piece of arsenal we had at each other and just being like, fuck it, we're just going to throw everything out there. And it just is what it is. So it doesn't matter how many pieces of furniture I throw through the fucking window. It doesn't matter, how many times you, broke down and were just like emotionally crushed, like trying to revisit some of that stuff. And me just being like, I don't give a fuck. Like, you're going to deal with that shit and live with that shit. Because that's the mentality I had for off and on for 90 days probably, where I was like, I don't want to talk about it anymore. This shit's over. I love you. We're going to do this thing. And then in a matter of, 90 minutes and the wrong thing being said on some fucking movie. And I'm like, God damn it. Fuck you. I hate your guts. You're going to tell me about this shit. What is this? And so, I don't know if that's where the downfall is in people, is where when conversations are being had that you're just not meeting them with full honesty. And it's like, yeah, it sucks. Like, hey, tell me about this year. What were all the X, Y's, and Z's? And you're like, fuck, okay, here we go. And then just like get it all out. It's like, are the ones that are failing and the ones that are creating the wrong type of energy, or the ones that are just kind of like leaving out minor things and, maybe not necessarily putting it out because it's felt, but it's not actually known. And I think that's one of the things that was really important for us, was that we both needed to know instead of just feeling.
Yeah.
Because like I didn't want to feel that you might not have possibly told me everything. I don't want to feel that maybe you did tell me everything. I don't want to feel that I could trust you. I didn't want to feel that I might be able to trust you. I wanted to fucking know everything. I wanted to know that I could trust you. I wanted to know all these things. So I think if you're leaving shit out there, you're leaving feelings that aren't known feelings. They're just these kind of murky, noisy, blurry emotions that like, it just makes people feel uneasy.
Yeah.
And I think if you're in a really traumatic situation, the last thing you need is more unease, for sure.
For sure.
It's a fucking wacky area to be in. Yeah, because I think it, I'm not saying this is the way, but one of the things we did was, I tried to leave and turn my phone off and then just fucking disappear. And you tracked my phone to, obviously knew I was at Dan's place, and just took off work for 7 days. And we joke about it now. It's like we went to neutral ground. Like I couldn't destroy this guy's condo. So we went to neutral ground and we would watch a movie on Netflix and we would emotionally break down and talk about some shit forever. It felt like forever. For however long it took, an hour or 2 hours, whatever the specific thing was. And then I'd bang the shit out of you. And then we'd watch another movie and we just rinse and repeated for like 7 days.
Yep.
And that was probably like the beginning of it starting to, and then obviously, things started to get a little bit, and it could have just been time, could have been a coincidence, but like, once we left the house, things got a little bit better. Once we left a lot of the shit behind, things got a little bit better. Once we walked away from the gym, things got a little bit better. So it was just like all those extra little pieces of weight that were not allowing us to kind of break through towards each other. It was just too much to carry, all that extra shit. So like once we started getting rid of that after we did that 7-day reconciliation, and then just knowing that emotions would come up when they came up, and we would just be there for each other, and then whatever it was.
That's a big piece of what we talk to a lot of our friends about that ask us questions, or anyone that asks, is making the steps, like being committed to it. Like if you want a different life, you have to action on that different life, period. There's no other way to put it.
Well, it's so weird because it's like, I was talking to my BJJ coach, Paulo, and I don't know how we got caught on this conversation about, people making things really hard about, decisions and some other stuff. And people, we talk about this all the time about how we just simplify everything. We just try to make it as easy as possible. And they're like, and I was like, let's just use, this isn't like a dream or an aspiration or whatever. It's just, if it happens, it happens. Great. But like, if I sat down and were like, I want to be a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? Like, I'm not the type of guy that's like, okay, how long does this take? How many belts do I have to go through? I have no fucking clue. None. I just know that if I show up every Tuesday and Saturday, eventually it'll happen.
Yep.
That's all I know. That's as far as my decision took me. There wasn't, fuck, I can't, Tuesdays, and then what times can I go, and why can I not do this, and why are Saturdays not good, and da-da-da-da. It's just like, no, if my task is I want to get a black belt, I got to show up every Tuesday and every Saturday and put in fucking work. That's it. It's as simple as that. I just have to do. And there's nothing else associated with that. And so I don't know why and where people are creating all these layers on top of a decision that was so easy. But
you do know why.
But if you break down, I'm going to go get my black belt, in I don't want to say the normal person's mind, they're like, fuck, I got to get a gi, and then what's the belt system, and how long does it take in each belt, and what are the specific moves I have to know at each belt, and how much hours a week do I need to put in, and to, if I want to do it in 10 years or 15 years or 7, what do those timelines look like? It's like, nah, man, you already just made it way more complicated than it actually was. You just fucking show up on Tuesday and Saturday and do. That's it. It's true. The byproduct is you'll get what you're trying to do. But you have to do consistently. That's the other flip side, I guess, is the consistency around your decision. If you decide,
either you're going to get it in a year or you're going to get it in 10 years if you're inconsistent. So that's just the outcome.
Well, and it's like, that's why we're like, fitness is so weird to me. It's like, you just get up at 5, do fitness from 5 to 5:45 in your house with push-ups and sit-ups and air squats and lunges, and then that's it. There's nothing else involved. You just get up and do.
It's true.
It's such a, this, I don't know. I think it's self-sabotaging. I think people, when they start creating this list of like, fuck, I got to do these 20 things in order for fitness to happen, that they actually don't want fitness to happen. I think the longer your list is an indicator of how much you actually want it to happen. So if your list is like...
Or you say it's a priority and it's absolutely not.
No, but I'm saying...
Your actions definitely are speaking louder
but
than your words.
The reason you have an action on it is because...
It's low on your priority list.
No, but the list then is like, oh, my kid woke up early and I couldn't find time and I was stressed that day and I didn't sleep well that night and it's like, oh, okay, see... Your list on why you couldn't do it is so long, it just actually means that you don't want to. Or you would just be like, doesn't matter if the fucking kid got up early. It didn't matter if this happened. It didn't this.
For sure.
Do. That's it. So I think that's one of the things where like, I wrote about it recently where, if you have a big dream, that you say you want to do, I give it on a weigh scale of like, how much do I want this from a 1 to 10? And then every year that I talk about it, I subtract on that. The lower the number, the less likely you're ever going to do it. So if, let's say, as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as an example, is like, okay, I want to get my black belt and I want it at a 10. But then I don't consistently go to BJJ for a year and I'm still talking about it. And then 2 years and I'm like, no, I'm going to get after it. I'm going to get back on Tuesdays and Saturdays. Now 2 years has gone by. So now I'm at an 8. And then 3 years and now I'm at a 7. And then eventually I'm not going to BJJ at all. It's like the lower that number gets, and I would even argue depending on how big the task is, like I get a lot of guys, or I got reached out 3 or 4 times this week already about, how to become special forces and how to do this and how to do that. And I'm like, well, and these guys are already in the Army. And I said, well, what's stopping you from going tomorrow? Like, what's actually stopping you from going tomorrow? Well, I was at my best shape 3 years ago and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, oh, okay, right there. I already know for a fact you're at a 7. So something that hard with that much commitment and that dedication, I think once you start dropping below 8s and 9s, it ain't going to fucking happen, man.
Yeah.
It just ain't going to happen. The thing, it's too fucking hard.
Yeah.
And you're already putting too many roadblocks in the way.
Yeah.
So I think that the harder the task, the bigger the gain, whatever the thing is, if you put a want on it of fucking 8 to 10, and then you bullshit and talk about it for a couple of years, it's never fucking happening.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
Well, it doesn't ever get any easier. Your body gets older, your life gets more complicated.
Yeah.
You have another kid. Like, life just keeps happening.
There's always something. It's
Yeah.
like, well, just like meditation today, it's like the best time is now.
Yep.
It's never, you're waiting for perfect circumstances, and life is the most imperfect motherfucker on the planet. It's never
Yeah.
going to happen. If you're looking for perfect circumstances, you're never going to execute.
On anything. Yeah, it's very, very true.
So,
Yep.
I don't want to take any more time.
You are
even
my
though
time.
even though you owe me.
I'm just grateful.
Just kidding, you don't. Me too, bro. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Me either.
Plus, you're kind of hot.
You're pretty cute.
That's part of it. Like, if you weren't that hot, you wouldn't get away with half the shit you do.
Even though I'm gimpy right now.
Yeah, but that's just because when that thing's fixed, I'm going to put it to work, bro.
Oh, thanks for having me on today, dear.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we chatted about some stuff so the listeners, I think we have like 3 or 4.
There are people out there that can gain some insight or something valuable from our story. For sure.
Hopefully that example gets people looking towards their elite.
Absolutely.
All right. See you next time.
Cheers.
Is that your outing? Cheers?
Mm-hmm.
What's mine? Gucci. Drives my daughter nuts. All right, guys.